Welcome to Bedtime Stories by BeezyBeezHoney.net. I hope you are settled in for the night and are ready to go on a journey of deep and relaxing sleep. To help you get there, we recommend you take a teaspoon of the Beezy Beez CBD infused honey and listen to tonight's story. If all goes right, you will not be able to hear how this story ends because you'll be in a deep sleep by then. Let's begin. Before you hear tonight's sleep story, I'd like to help you get really relaxed and ready for sleep. I'd just like you to become aware of your body now as you lie here in a position where you can easily fall asleep. This will help you leave the day behind and come into a place of peace and relaxation. So, just become aware now of your feet. Just notice them, any and all sensations happening in your feet, any tingling or aches after a long day. Just notice. Good. Now, become aware of your legs. These legs that carry you through your day. Notice any sensations, anything at all. Good. Now notice your belly. Notice the rising and falling as your breath enters and leaves your body. In and out. In and out. Just notice. Good. Now into your chest area, this area that protects your vital organs. Just notice this place. Good. Now into your hands and arms, any and all sensations. If there's any tension here, let it go. In fact, let any and all tension go throughout your entire body. Good. And finally, into your face, neck, and head. Notice anything here and let go of anything you're holding. Very good. Now it's time to listen to tonight's sleep story. Sean looked at the woman looking back at him. He did love her. Margaret. His Margaret. The one he'd been doing life with now for 37 years. He saw her today as he hadn't seen her in a long time. He saw the blue in her eyes shining brightly. He saw the dimple in her left cheek. It reminded him of when she was 19 when they had first met. He saw her teeth, and how that one tooth that she detested was still there, in the same place. He loved that tooth. He looked at her, and she looked at him, expectantly. "Well?" she said. "Well, what?" he replied. "Do you want to go to Ireland to find out about your ancestry or not?" It's early morning, 3 days later. The sun has not long been in the sky, and Sean and Margaret are on a little boat off the west coast of Ireland, sailing to a small island called Inishmore, an island where Sean believes some of his distant relatives may still be living. The spray coming off the calming waters is so refreshing, and Sean feels so alive right now. Margaret looks over to him standing there on the other side of the deck, and she realizes in that moment that she has always loved him deeply. They've had their ups and their downs, like any married couple. But in that moment, Margaret sees the man she married. He's a good man, she thinks to herself. A kind man. He deserves this. Sean has always dreamed of coming here, to Ireland, that is. His mother had always spoken about how her father had decided to make the move to America in the 1920s in search of a better life. She told Sean that herself, her sisters, and her mother had sailed with him, leaving their life in Ireland behind. They had settled in Boston, and Sean's grandfather had worked in the construction game, helping to build America, as many thousands of Irish immigrants had done over many years. But something had always felt wrong in Sean's heart about his life. Not wrong, but something had always felt missing. He had never felt quite complete. Now, if you looked at the life Sean and Margaret had built for themselves, you could be forgiven for assuming that life was about as complete as it could get. They were both very successful in their own right. Sean, a successful architect. Margaret, a renowned psychotherapist. They had 2 grown-up children who were both doing well in life. They lived in the leafy suburbs of Boston in a beautiful home that they both cherished. But always, at the back of Sean's mind, something, just something, was missing, and Margaret knew it. As the years passed by, and the world moved into the 21st century, Sean began to feel increasingly disconnected from an overly connected world. He had become disillusioned with the idea of what it is to be a good person in a world that he saw filled with people that were only out for themselves. He craved something else, but it was something that he couldn't quite put his finger on, nor could Margaret. So here the two of them were, standing atop the deck of this rusty old boat that they chartered to take them from Galway City out to the Aran Islands, and specifically to Inishmore, the biggest of the 3 islands. They could have taken a passenger ferry, but the romantic spirit within them both decided to make this their own personal voyage. "What was the name of your grandfather again, Sean?" said Cillian, the extremely welcoming and jolly skipper of the little boat. Sean O'Fuelan," Sean replied. "I'm called after him." Cillian looked off into space, as if pondering something incredibly deep. The deep lines of his 57-year-old, weather-beaten face straining with thought. O'Fuelan. No, never heard of him." He casually resigned his thinking face and walked back to the boat's wheel without a care in the world. Margaret looked out on the beautiful Atlantic, the 3 islands now coming into view, and the serene waters that were like a mill pond this morning. She always loved to be near water. She felt it so calming for her soul. She took some deep breaths, in and out. In and out. Then Sean came over and held her, and she felt so safe in his arms as the two of them now looked at the warm blue sky and the magical waters beneath. Then, all of a sudden, a school of dolphins started swimming alongside the boat. They were so close that one could almost touch them and see their smiling faces. This was a joyous moment for Sean and Margaret, as they both felt so close to nature all of a sudden, so removed from their busy, daily lives. They looked at each other with smiling eyes and laughed in pure elation at the experience they were sharing. Before long, they were pulling into the little harbour at Inishmore. They paid Cillian and waved him off, his happy, smiling head still visible as the boat pulled out of the harbour. They both looked around, a little unsure, now they were here, what they were to do. Just then, a red-headed lady approached them. "Hello there. Welcome to Inishmore. Can I help you?" "Yes," they both said at the same time, and then awkwardly laughed. "Great. I'd be happy to help. I'm Mary. I have a taxi here. Well, I say taxi, it's not what you'd call a taxi. It's my horse, Amber, and my cart. But we can get you anywhere. Where are you staying on the island? Sean replied hesitantly. We haven't actually thought that far ahead. We just flew in from the States last night, and this was all a little rushed. Even better, Mary replied excitedly. You'll be happy to hear that I also have a little cottage that I rent out, and it's free for 2 weeks. Would you like to see it? Yes, we would, Margaret replied without hesitation. They loaded their things onto the little carriage, and the lovely horse Amber faithfully began to trot along the little winding roads away from the harbor and out into the island. As they rode, they started to see the landscape around them. Dramatic is one word you could use. Magnificent is another. Dry stone walls covered the fields, made from the rock of the island. The green was a green neither of them had ever seen, so lush and inviting, and the sounds were noticeable in their absence. This place was paradise. Mary chatted to them both at length as they trotted along about her life on the island, about how she was very proud to be an Aran Islander, how she was descended from island folk and would never live anywhere else. After some time, with the morning sun now high in the sky, on this beautiful summer's morning, they pulled up outside the most adorable little cottage with a thatch roof and a quaint little garden. Yes, Sean thought, this would work very well. They made an arrangement with Mary and settled into their new home for the next couple of weeks. This was the first time in years, maybe even ever, that both Sean and Margaret had absolutely no idea what they were going to do with themselves for the foreseeable future. The only project they had was finding someone who might know something about Sean's family. Mary had given them one lead, Mark O'Fuelon, a local artist who might know something, and he lived on the other side of the island. The next morning, Sean was up early and spent his first minutes of his day in quiet reflection. He felt something powerful in this place. In fact, he felt something he had never felt before, a kind of peace of mind. Sure, he had known sporadic moments of peace, but this felt deeper and more a part of him. Margaret came down the stairs and saw her husband sitting cross-legged on the woolen rug and asked, "What are you doing, Sean?" "Shh," he replied. "I'm processing things." Margaret smiled to herself, walked into the garden, and took a deep breath of fresh morning island air. The chickens clucking around the place, and the distant ocean, the only sounds that filled the morning air. She also felt something here. She felt grounded, supported, safe, and at peace. Later that day, Sean and Margaret ventured by bicycle to the home of Mark the artist to see if he could enlighten Sean as to his ancestry. They arrived at yet another charming cottage, knocked on the door, and were greeted by a rather serious-looking man with a grey beard. "Yes," he said. Hi. My name is Sean." But before he could finish his sentence, Mark cut Sean off. "Let me guess. Your name is Sean Murphy, and you think you might be Irish because your grandfather had an Irish wolfhound that told you about your Irish cousins who were leprechauns and lived on a fairy hill?" Sean didn't know what to say. He felt insulted and hurt. "I'm only joking with you, Sean. Mary has told me all about you. Come on in, and I'll put on a pot of tea. And you too, Margaret. Céad míle fáilte," which means 100,000 welcomes. The couple entered the artist's house, amazed by his stunning work of the beautiful landscape of this place. They were amazed by his beautiful home and the peaceful ambience he had obviously, very intentionally created here. Mark came back in with the tea, and they began to talk. It transpired that they were indeed related. A bit of comparing notes on names of grandparents, aunts, and uncles brought them to the conclusion that Mark's grandmother was the sister of Sean's grandfather, which made them second cousins. After this discovery, Sean and Mark had a long hug, and Sean felt something else drop within, a kind of guard or a certain pride. He felt more connected to what it was to be human in this kind man's presence. In a way, he felt like he had met a brother, not a cousin. Days passed, and Sean and Margaret fell more and more in love with the island, with its people. They couldn't quite comprehend the welcome they had received. the pure generosity without expectation of anything in return. Here, Sean and Margaret witnessed a way of life that they never knew they were both craving all of their lives. They took long walks by the ocean, walking and walking, watching the rhythmic waves and enjoying their surroundings. They got up early every morning to watch the sunrise and sat together every evening to see the sun set. They saw how people here simplified life. They only lived with what they needed. They had community, real community, and Margaret and Sean already felt completely a part of it. On their last night, as they lay in bed and switched off the light to go to sleep, Sean lay there with his eyes open, looking into the darkness. After a few minutes, he said, "Margaret, are you awake?" "Yes," she sleepily replied. "I'm not going tomorrow. I want us to stay." Margaret turned in the bed and turned on the light to check that her husband wasn't joking. "You're serious?" she asked. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life," Sean said, wearing a giant grin. The couple held each other in what they both knew was a mutual agreement, and what they also both knew was the first moment of the rest of their lives. In that one single moment where their entire lives changed, Sean and Margaret came to the recognition that by sailing here to this island, they had found the better life that Sean's ancestors had left in search of. Now it's time for you to fall asleep. Good night, and sleep well. you.